always need to put some type of goal out there for yourself. Because if you don't have a goal, you don't have anything to go after. You don't have the motivation to get better. You don't have the motivation to make changes in your current situation, right? You have to set clear, objectionable goals, right? And you have to understand what it is that you are striving to achieve. So what is the game of money, and what are the rules that you should be following when you are playing said game? This is Eric Douglas with Family Wealth Planning Partners. Thanks for spending a few more minutes with me here today on our YouTube channel. The topic for today came from an article that I came across, and I love to review these articles in quite a bit of detail and kind of walk through them with our viewers and with our clients, specifically because you get so much information out there in the financial news media today. A lot of it's good, but quite frankly, a lot of it's pretty terrible. And then they get a lot of it that's somewhere in between. But I like to share our viewpoint on it from myself and, of course, from our firm standpoint, and the way that we talk about a number of these topics with our clients to kind of let you into our mindset and the way that we view not only necessarily money in general, but really all of financial planning as a whole. And the article that we came across talked specifically about the rules for the game of money, and they listed out 10. And I'm going to go through these one by one, and I'm going to expand and elaborate upon each one of these and maybe give you a little bit more in-depth analysis on the way that we feel on each one of these topics. So first and foremost, the number one rule for the game of money is financial education, which is continuously learning about personal finance, investing, and wealth building strategies. 100% this is accurate. That this is really one of the core foundations of our firm. If you go to the homepage of our website, it tells you specifically one of the core tenets that we like to do is educate clients on money and on their wealth. An educated client makes far better decisions about what to do with their money and makes a far better plan, or helps us put together a far more efficient plan if our clients truly understand what it is that we're doing, and not only what we're doing, but why we're doing it. One of the things that we love is when clients walk into our door and they've already done some of the research themselves, and maybe they just need a little bit of help putting some of the things around the edges together. But when they come into our office with an understanding of, roughly an idea of what it is they're looking to accomplish, and maybe they just need help getting there, we love to help those clients because, number one, it shows an interest that they have in their own personal finances. And if they have an interest in their personal finances, that shows us that they're committing to the plan that we might help put together and put on the table for them. And if we know that they're committed, we know that they're going to follow through. So we love to have educated clients in all facets of our financial planning process. So absolutely, that's definitely one of the top rules for this game of money if we're going by what the article's premise is here. And number two, living below your means. That's not rocket science. Everyone should pretty much understand that. Don't spend more than you make. Not too terribly much more that we need to add on to that. But definitely, you should be creating a solid financial foundation that enables you to save. And if you start doing this at a young age, the younger you start implementing these really good money habits, the easier it is for you to sustain that throughout your entire life. It's interesting because when we work with clients as they go to retire, one of the hardest things, one of the most difficult things that we have is trying to convince a client to actually go out and spend some more of their money. And we've talked about this a lot on our podcast here before, but trying to get clients to break these financial habits that they've spent literally an entire lifetime forming, it's really tough to get them to go spend money if they're a spendthrift. If they're not used to spending a certain amount of money per year, it's really, really difficult for these clients to go out and start cutting checks for things that they want to do. Perfect example, we had a client walk in, or not a client, they are an existing client when they came to us, but they're probably worth north of $2 million. And we're, of course, managing most of that. Some of that's built up into their home. But even still, we've shown them 5 ways to Sunday that there's no way that they're going to run out of money. It's just not going to happen. We've tried to blow holes, and this is pretty standard for us. We try to blow holes in their financial plan and see what the biggest threats to their situations are. There really aren't none. I mean, this client, the way that they've established their routines, the way that they've spent money throughout their entire life, they just have a saver's mentality, and it's become really difficult for us to try to convince them to feel free or to have the freedom to go spend the money that they've spent this lifetime accumulating. But definitely living below your means, the earlier you can learn to do that, the better off you're going to be throughout your entire life. Of course, that leads into number 3, which is saving and investing. Now, of course, this is going to be one of the biggest priorities, but what they say here is consistently setting aside a portion of your income for savings and investments is crucial for building wealth over time. This goes back to living below your means. of course, right? But the earlier that you begin to save and the earlier that you begin to invest, the number one component of a successful investment plan is actually time. It has nothing to do with the investments you choose. It has nothing to do with your rates of return. The number one component is how much you're saving on an annual basis and how long you're able to leave it alone, quite frankly. And so if you're developing a good habit of living below your means, as well as saving and investing throughout that time as well, those are going to be some of the biggest indicators for financial success over the course of your lifetime. And of course, leading into a successful retirement as well, which is really where we come into play. Diversification, spreading your investments across various asset classes helps to reduce risk and maximize returns in the long run. No major problems with that by any means, but I will add a few different points of elaboration, if you will. Diversification just for diversification's sake is not always going to get you the necessary returns that you are looking for. Just because there is an existing asset class out there doesn't mean that you have to have a piece of that pie. When you look at a list of all of the different sectors in the economy and in the stock market, you don't have to necessarily own every single one of them. Diversification as a rule, yes, absolutely. We do believe in diversification and a well-balanced portfolio. Reason for that is because we never know what specific asset class in any given year is going to be the best performing. And it's impossible for us to know. It's impossible for anyone to know. Anyone telling you otherwise is, quite frankly, just lying to you. And they have their own interests at heart because they're, quite frankly, probably trying to sell you something. But really, the best thing to do, yes, absolutely, is to diversify your portfolio. But there is such a thing as over-diversification as well. And this is something that I've had to educate clients a lot on throughout the years because they think that they want to diversify their portfolios, meaning they have to have a piece of every single little sector out there in the market. And they have to have so much allocated to international, and they have to have so much allocated to small caps and real estate and all these different subsets of the market. And while I certainly understand that thinking, there was a valuable rule that I learned when I came into this business around the way to construct a portfolio. If you can't put 5% towards something, you can't put 5% towards anything, okay? Basically what that means is it's the old football analogy. If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one, you don't have enough of a conviction in your portfolio towards any specific asset class. At some point, you need to have conviction around what it is that you're investing in. You need to understand why you're investing in something, whether that's a specific asset class or maybe it's real estate or whatever it may be. You need to have conviction in what it is that you're putting money to, what you're investing in, and why you're doing it. Okay, so diversification absolutely is certainly very valuable, but there is a risk of over-diversification in your portfolio as well. Along those same lines, we're talking about investment diversification. What this does not talk about is tax diversification. And we spend a lot of time talking about tax planning and preparing for taxes in retirement. Most people tend to think that the number one expense in retirement is going to be healthcare, which is absolutely not true. That's typically number two, but number one is still taxes by a mile, by a long country mile, quite frankly. And so we have to prepare for taxes, and the best way to do that, to prepare for taxes in retirement and to alleviate that tax burden, is to start that tax planning when you're young, okay? And the way that you do that is to diversify not only your investments, of course, but where those investments are located, okay? And that's called asset location. You want to locate your assets, your tax-efficient assets, in the most tax-efficient vehicles and your least tax-efficient assets and maybe your less tax-efficient vehicles. But you also need to have different types of vehicles, right? You need to have different cookie jars from which you can draw your cookies from. The reason for that is because if you have three different types of accounts, you're going to have three different types of tax treatment, meaning you're able to pick and choose to a far greater degree in retirement the type of taxes that you want to realize. I really love control around your investments, but control also extends to the tax liabilities that you're going to have throughout your retirement. So you want to have a little bit of pre-tax, you want to have a little bit of post-tax, and you want to have a little bit of tax-free. And if you have kind of a combination of all three types of those accounts, you're going to be set up for a pretty successful retirement. And there's never enough emphasis placed on tax diversification as much as it is on portfolio diversification. The next one's a big one, understanding and managing debt. And I absolutely agree with this first sentence that not all debt is bad. especially in today's world, quite frankly. We live in a world that's driven by debt, and you have to understand that in order to live a debt-free lifestyle, you're going to have to be extremely uncomfortable for a while. I definitely admire that in those that are looking to live a debt-free lifestyle. You typically are sacrificing quite a bit on the front end in order to achieve that goal. By the time you achieve that goal, you typically have created a lifestyle for yourself that now you're going back to my point earlier. You're not really feeling comfortable to go out and spend that money that you now actually have the ability to go spend. I think when it comes to debt, you have to be very smart about it. There is good debt, right? You go out and buy a house, and if you're investing in a nice home for you to live in, debt can be really good, right? It can be a quote unquote good investment because you're investing in your family, you're investing in your future, you're investing in your lifestyle. Sometimes when you only look at the X's and O's, people tend to get a little bit scared of debt, but as long as you manage it accordingly within your cash flow, within your budget, it doesn't have to necessarily be a scary thing. And it's interesting now because with interest rates, now that interest rates have increased substantially over the last couple of years, I'm having to have this conversation quite a bit right now around whether or not folks should be paying off debt early. And when we have money market accounts and cash accounts that are paying upwards of 4.5%, 5%, it's really difficult for me to tell you to pay off a loan at 2.5%, 3% interest. When your money is far more efficient, it's going to serve you far more efficiently just sitting in a cash account earning more interest than what you would be looking to pay off on maybe an old mortgage that you refinanced in the early 2020s. A couple years ago when interest rates got so low, so ridiculously low. And quite frankly, we'll probably never see those interest rates again. So if you're able to hold on to a low interest rate like that, they can actually be very conducive for your lifestyle and actually more efficient within your overall financial plan if you maintain that debt. As long as you maintain it, once again, along with the good cash flow, and you're not taking on too much of it. Debt becomes a really bad word, a really bad four-letter word when people take on too much of it that they cannot handle. As someone who used to be in the mortgage business prior to 2008, and I was seeing a lot of those subprime loans being handed out to borrowers that quite frankly did not deserve them. It did not shock me when 2008 happened and we saw a crash in the housing market. That was bad debt. People were taking on far more than they were able to handle. But that's not really something that's applicable if you're able to build it within your cash flow and you're only finding it's called debt to income. If you can maintain a debt to income ratio where the amount of debt that you have relative to your cash flow each month, if you can maintain about a 25 to 30% debt to income ratio, all things considered, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. Harnessing the power of compounding. So this is going to be a really big one because I don't think most people truly understand and appreciate the value of compounding. And this goes back to creating habits early. But the reason it's so valuable that creating those successful saving and investing habits at an early age is so important because compounding, once again, is going to be the greatest factor in the overall success of your investment portfolios. It's not the stocks that you pick. It's not the funds. It's not the investments. It's not any of that stuff. It's time. And the reason time is so valuable is because you are allowing the power of compounding to work for you. And if you're able to allow the power of compounding to work for you over a period of decades, as opposed to a period of years, you're just going to be so much more successful in your investment journey. All I have to do is just refer to the rule of 72. Which states that if you get a 7.2% rate of return over a 10-year period, and this is assuming no additional contributions to any of your accounts, but if you have a 7.2% rate of return during the accumulation phase over a period of a decade, your money will double. Okay, your money will double. So if we start out with $100,000 over the next 10 years, if we can average a 7.2% interest rate return or rate of return, you're going to have $200,000. Add another decade to that, we're talking about 400, then we're talking about 800. That's the power of compounding. Compounding is infinitely valuable, and it becomes more and more valuable the earlier that you start. I'm saying this in my 40s, okay? I'm in my 40s now, and I'm going back to what I did in my 20s. If I had even listened to any of the advice that I'm giving out right now, I would be in a much better spot. I would have been in a much better ability, or if I had been smart enough to be a little bit smarter with my finances in my 20s when I got out of college, I would be reaping the rewards today, and I would be reaping even more rewards when I go to retire in a couple decades. I will also add creating multiple streams of income. Now, this one tends to get overblown a little bit. I've seen a lot of successful individuals that only have one stream of income. Some people will tell you, and there's a lot of gurus on TikTok and social media, and you hear a lot about this in real estate, about having to create multiple streams of income in order to be successful or to create a successful retirement plan. That's just not true. You need to have dependable income, okay? You need to have dependable income, but if you're obeying some of these other rules of money, you're going to be okay. If you're living below your means, if you have your emergency fund set up, if you're saving and investing on a regular basis, and you're prepared for the situation where you might lose that stream of income, as long as you're giving yourself some runway to be able to find a new stream of income, you're going to be okay. If you are entrepreneurial minded or you are an entrepreneur, I understand the idea of needing to create multiple streams of income, but most people aren't like that. Most people are not necessarily creative enough or ambitious enough to go out and do that on their own. Most people are going to go work for someone else for most of their life, and that's okay. It's okay if you have one stream of income, or if you're maybe in a marriage, two forms of income. That's perfectly fine, and you can have a very, very, very successful retirement. We work with clients that have done that. They do all the things during their life that are correct, and they come to us and they're ready to retire, and we're able to help them immensely because they did all the things leading up to retirement, but they did it with primarily one or two forms of income. So I think having multiple streams of income tends to get overblown in our social media driven world, and I don't try to pay too terribly much attention to that. Now, what I will say is understanding income and understanding cash flow, because most people think, oh, I have to generate some type of a cash flow in retirement, so I need to go own a business or own some real estate or something like that. You can generate cash flow from your investments, and there's not really enough attention paid to how that occurs. And we can probably do an episode strictly on that topic. Investments by nature are designed to generate income. That's what fixed income investment means, essentially. It's generating a fixed rate of return or a fixed income that you're able to live off of. People have been doing it for years with dividends from stocks or from stock funds, paying themselves from the dividends that are generated off of some of their retirement accounts. You can generate cash flow from your investments, okay? And that is a separate stream of income. And most people tend to look at their investments on a completely different level than the way that they view things like real estate or business ownership or something like that. Your investments generate income just as much as those other things do. So it's important to understand cash flow, okay, and where some of these streams of income can come from as well. Tax planning and optimization. So understanding tax laws and implementing strategies to minimize tax liabilities. So this goes back to the idea that I was talking about earlier about tax diversification and how important it is to understand your current tax situation. And most people don't. Most people give everything to their accountant every year, and their accountant deals with it. Understand that. I don't like dealing with taxes either. I hate taxes, right? But it's a fact of life. When in my business we're trying to plan or come up with the financial plan or some type of a retirement income plan, going back to the number one expense that retirees have is taxes. We have to understand taxes, and we have to prepare and plan for them accordingly. And so understanding, number one, the tax bracket that you're in, understanding things like the differences between effective and marginal tax rates, understanding how capital gains taxes are different from ordinary income taxes, which are different from long and short-term capital gains, right? Understanding all of those differences and the types of taxes that you have to pay and the way that they are accrued on your income. Or assessed on your income, I should say. This goes back to understanding tax diversification and really understanding financial education, quite frankly, and educating yourself or allowing someone like myself to help educate you on things like tax planning and optimization. The last two, number one, the last two, setting clear financial goals. I do find this really, really important. I'll add on to what this article says. This article talks about defining your financial objectives and creating a plan to achieve them allows you to measure your progress and make necessary adjustments. 100% agree with everything that was just said. However, I would go even further and add that without a goal, you don't have anything to pursue. You always need to put some type of goal out there for yourself, because if you don't have a goal, you don't have anything to go after. You don't have the motivation to get better. You don't have the motivation to make changes in your current situation, right? You have to set clear, objectionable goals, right? And you have to understand what it is that you are striving to achieve. Most people don't typically think about things like that, or they don't set their lives or set up plans throughout their life to achieve clear, definable goals, especially by maybe a certain time point. We have found when we're constructing financial plans and retirement income plans, it becomes far easier for us to help clients realize and understand their own plan if we're able to help them come up with some goals that they want to achieve. Now, in retirement, typically you're talking about like retirement goals or new cars or, a vacation house or something like that. But it's really, really important, especially if we're working with retirees. You don't stop setting goals. You don't stop setting goals for yourself and trying to achieve different things. So if you want to go buy a vacation house, that's where we come into play, okay? And that's where we come into play and try to help you achieve that goal. You should always be striving to achieve new goals, even in retirement. The learning process doesn't stop. It should not stop in retirement. If you're trying to have a successful, happy, healthy retirement, you still need things to strive for. Even more so than just trying to set clear financial goals, that doesn't end in retirement. That needs to continue on well into the end of your life. And kind of along those same lines, the last subject in this article is adopting a long-term mindset. Too many times we've had clients walk in the door. Let's say they're in their 50s or 60s and they're starting to get serious about retirement planning. Throughout their life, they've maintained a short-term money mindset, meaning they were chasing the big cars or they were chasing the big houses, and they were not focused on the long-term picture, on some of the things that they should have been doing throughout their lifetime. And now, quite frankly, it's a little bit too late. Or maybe it's too late to have the retirement that they always visualized because they were far too focused on the here and now. This goes back to, once again, I'm becoming a broken record to some degree, but this goes back to understanding the implication and the value of compounding and understanding why time is the most valuable asset to the success of your investment portfolio. It's not the investments themselves, it's not the stocks that you choose, it's the time in which you allow your investments to perform. You buy really good funds, yes, absolutely, that's certainly something you want to do, but it means nothing if you're always trying to change strategies and you're not giving them the time, you're not giving those investments time to do what they're supposed to do. And the best, most successful plans take decades to develop and take decades to become successful. Typically, when we become involved, when we start putting together retirement income plans, or someone is looking to prepare for retirement maybe in 5 to 10 years, that's typically when most people look to go hire financial advisors. We're just trying to put the icing on the cake. We're trying to bring you home. We're trying to bring you around the last corner of the racetrack, and we're trying to bring you home, okay? Now we're coming down the home stretch. If you're not doing the hard work up front to help prepare for that, there's only so much we can do at the end of the race. So that's why understanding and having goals throughout your lifetime, and then helping us to help you establish clear retirement goals as well, while adopting a long-term mindset, even in retirement. That long-term mindset does not go away in retirement as well. If you retire at 65, the average lifespan is well into the 80s. We pretty much always have to prepare for at least one spouse in a married couple to live at least into their 90s. If you retire at 65, that's a 25, 30-year time frame that we have to prepare for. That's a long-term growth plan. We still need long-term goals. We still need to adopt a long-term mindset. So when we're looking at evaluating the rules for the game of money, those are definitely some of the very important aspects that we need to consider. So thank you very much for spending a few minutes with me here today. Definitely appreciate you. If anything I said today might have sparked an interest in you wanting to reach out and have a discussion with us on our YouTube channel, you can definitely find a link to our website where you can look to schedule a call with either myself or a member of my team. We would love to chat with you about your questions, comments, concerns, anything that is top of mind for you. Until next time.